Today, we're going to be talking about something that's very fitting to the springtime as the weather starts to break here and we get into the change in seasons, and that is fear of change. A lot of times around this time of the year, people start getting new jobs, thinking about getting that next apartment, moving to a new state, in general, just ready to make moves and make changes in their life. But for those who come from trauma, the concept of change can be very scary. In reality, the concept of change can be very scary for just about anyone. But what's different about those who come from a background of complex trauma is the fear is not just like, oh, I'm a little bit nervous. No, the fear is actually like, hold on, stop the show. We are absolutely not going to be making any changes. And so they tend to have an extreme adverse reaction to the concept of making changes in their life, even when those changes could seem positive. For instance, you could receive a job offer, or you could receive a promotion, or you could receive an opportunity to move to another state or get a bigger apartment. But whatever it is that seems to be on the table, whereas a lot of people would see that as an opportunity, you see it as an opportunity to fail or as something very scary. Why? Because we fear what we do not know. And when there's change, there's a lot of unknowns in change, isn't there? The fears can be various behind this underlying fear of change. For instance, it could be a fear of getting into that new position and being a failure, or getting into that new position and being a disappointment. It could be the fear of being judged. So we have many who have expressed concern about leaving their own house because they fear that people could be looking at them and judging them. Really, anytime we do make a change or make any move in our life, we really are putting ourselves out there, aren't we? And so we really leave ourselves open to being judged. The fear of change could really come down to a fear of discomfort. It's nice when we kind of know how everything goes and where everything is. And so this idea that we now have to upend everything that's comfortable for us is very frightening and very just uncomfortable. For many, just the fear of change could be very nebulous, meaning they don't see exactly what it is. It's just a hazy idea that if they make a change, there's going to be something that they didn't foresee that's going to go wrong. So they just fear that there's going to be an inevitable negative aspect, some type of suffering that they will have to incur as a result of making a change. In all of these cases, persons who fear change will lock up and prevent themselves, even sabotage themselves from getting into that next position or moving forward in life. And this can be and will be to their detriment. But why do they lock up? Well, though it could seem clearly illogical to those on the outside, for them it's not so clear, because where they come from, where a complex trauma survivor comes from, things can get really unsafe really fast. Things can get really real really quickly. At least they could when they were in a situation where they were being neglected or abused. You see, it comes back to those primary caregivers. If you had parents that were emotionally immature, how did they model response to change? It could be that your parents, who were emotionally immature your entire lives, would always panic when it came to change in their lives. And so they would act really uncomfortable or become extremely controlling or start yelling. And there would be all this anxiety and all this terror in the household because there was some change. We were going to a new school, we're moving out of state. There was something that was going to change. So as a result, emotionally immature parents model frazzled behavior as a response to change. For some, their parents had a environment of chaos in the home. You may have been raised in a home where there's always too much change happening. There's people coming, people going. You're moving from house to house, from city to city, from country to country. Your parents are switching their jobs. They have money, they don't have money. There's constant change and chaos. And so what you learn to survive that situation is whatever I can control, I will keep it calm. I will keep it peaceful. Because if it's under my control, then I will have no change. And if I have no change, then I can finally feel safe. Because the chaotic environment I'm being raised in doesn't give me the stability that I instinctually need. And in reality, children need stability. So when children don't have stability, they crave stability. And so they will create the stability by either disassociating from all the chaos around them or isolating themselves physically and going into the basement or their rooms. Some kids raise themselves in the closet of their bedroom, and they would go hide in the closet because of the chaotic, stressful, unpredictable environment that they were raised in. To be raised correctly, children need to have a predictable, stable environment. It should be basically the same every day. This allows them to develop a sense of confidence in their surroundings, to not feel like they have to be constantly in survival mode. But unfortunately, those who come from complex trauma were raised in a household where they had to constantly be watching their back. You may have had caregivers that, because of their emotional insecurity, when it came to change, they never wanted to make a change. And so to this day, they still have the same carpets, the same pictures on the wall. They won't update their television. I mean, they just are holdouts. They always want to use the oldest technology. They don't ever want to make a change. And so they modeled for you behavior that change is stressful, change is scary. And so now that it's your turn to get out and make changes, you may feel, well, I'm not as bad as my parents, but their traumatized behavior has rubbed off on me, and I'm afraid of change also. When you get into the way that you were parented, if you had a caregiver that would actually use fear to motivate you, then that's going to make you all the more afraid of change. Here's what I mean. Using fear to motivate you would be, for instance, if you don't get up out of bed at the right time, they will come in and they will punish you, or they will yell at you, or they will start hitting you with something. And anytime they wanted to move you, like you're some type of horse, they would just start beating you. Not that I would advocate beating horses either, but isn't it so sad that these individuals felt it was necessary to beat or harass or demean their children to pressure them into making changes? So as these children learn, hey, the more same things are, the more safe things are, and same equals safe, these children become more and more balled up and afraid and timid, which frustrates the parents who want the children to grow up and to move forward into the next grade level, into learning how to tie their shoes, into going up and paying for their ice cream cone. And so they actually use stress and fear and terror to get the child to move forward. Go! What I tell you to do, go! And so the child is now caught in this impossible situation between I'm afraid of change and I'm afraid of development because it could get really scary, but now I'm afraid to stay still too, because my parents are actually making a chaotic, scary situation for me, and something bad is going to happen if I don't go. And so their stress system gets activated to the peak level, and now out of fear, they have to move forward, instead of being able to move forward out of a simple understanding that moving forward in life and making changes will allow them to progress. It's important that parents actually reward their children when their children overcome some obstacle or move forward. But neglectful and abusive parents often fail to reward their children for their successes. So when you learned how to tie your shoe, instead of getting, all right, nice job, that's fantastic, it's just good. And they move on. The parents are uninterested in building up the self-esteem of the child. When the child doesn't get their self-esteem built up, they never get a chance to feel confident. They never get the opportunity to learn change equals good reward in the end. The only thing they ever see is that they get punished if they don't move forward, and they also get punished if they do move forward and it isn't to the liking of the caregiver. And so they're always caught in this constant crucible of feeling like no matter which direction I move, it's a problem. So let me just stay still. And they become like a turtle and they go into their shell when it comes time for change. It's understanding that a child could become that way when they're raised in that environment. The problem is when they leave their parents' home, when they grow up and they're on their own and they're in the real world, they now don't have the skills built to be able to be successful in the real world. Because you have to embrace change, because change is a part of life, isn't it? But they've learned that whenever there's a change, whenever I'm faced with having to do something different than the norm, and it's not the same, and same equals safe, then change equals danger. And so they bring those same programs into their adult life. You can imagine what it would be like if a child was whipped with a belt every time it started to rain. What would happen to that child over time? For instance, when they start to see gray clouds. Just the sight of a cloudy day alone would activate the child's stress system. But that's essentially how a complex trauma survivor grows up. Whenever there was a change that needed to be made in the house, it was a cause for stress, anxiety in the environment, and it became scary for that child. As a result, when that child becomes an adult, they still just see clouds, so to speak, and they become anxious. So just the very idea now for that adult survivor of childhood trauma to change jobs or change apartments or live in a new state or change partners or get new friends, just the idea of change is very frightening. And it doesn't have to be big changes. Like we say, it could just be going from being inside your house to walking outside your house. Making just that change could be stressful. Changing the brand of peanut butter you use could be stressful. And the more that that person boxes themselves in and closes themselves in and goes like a turtle into their little shell, the more stressful they feel around various changes. Again, that parent never validated the child for overcoming change and adversity, because change is a part of life. So the child needed to learn, should have learned, how to feel confident in the face of adversity or change. When you learn to tie your shoes, now it's going to produce a good result because we're all going to feel proud of you. Not, now we can go back to ignoring you. The child never learns that there's a good result to making a change. Now that you've progressed into middle school from grade school, we're all going to be proud of you. Not, we don't care, we don't pay attention to you until you do something wrong. Then we use that as a basis to make you feel unloved. And unloved is exactly the way a child who comes from complex trauma feels. It didn't have to be parents that necessarily laid a finger on the child. If the parents simply were disconnected emotionally from the child, this gives a perception to the child that they are unlovable. And they've done studies where a parent will experimentally disconnect from the child just in their attention. So they'll just start playing with their phone. Immediately, the child's nervous and stress system goes up. They sense that there's a disconnection. And so even as a toddler or a baby, they begin to clamor for the attention. What they saw in the study is if the parents still didn't provide the attention and continue to be distracted, the child would shut down emotionally. As a result, many survivors are already shut down emotionally, afraid to break out of their shell, afraid to make a move to the right or to the left. They have not been validated in their decision-making ability. They have not been validated in their ability to overcome adversity. They have not been validated in their ability to make it through transitions. They've only been punished if they moved and punished if they don't. And so they have a concept of their life like they're really not in control. Just the very thought of change triggers stress in any person. But for a trauma survivor, when the thought of change triggers stress, that stress triggers anxiety. That anxiety triggers panic, and that panic triggers, hey, same equals safe. Let's go into turtle mode. We go into survival mode, and we got to buckle down, lock all the doors, close all the blinds, and try to ride out this storm. Because the last thing I want to do is change. Even if I'm unhappy in my current marriage, even if I don't like my current job, even if I hate the clothes I'm wearing, even if I don't like the food I am eating, I am too afraid to speak up, to stand up, and to make a change. Because I have learned in my life that same is safe. So I would rather suffer what I'm experiencing now than to face the unknown. There was an astronaut who said, the more you know, the less you fear. To that end, the more you face obstacles and adversities and expose yourself to the potential scary things that you're fearing, the less you will fear them, because you will know from experience that you have what it takes to actually overcome those obstacles. Where parents failed in helping you to build your confidence, you will need to step up and reparent yourself. How can that be done? Well, remember when your parents were teaching you how to do a skill or overcome a certain adversity, like let's say they were teaching you to cook. As you remember, whenever you made a mistake, they would yell at you. Or if you came to them for help with your homework, when you would make a mistake, they would punish you. Or they would ignore any of that and not give you any help, signaling to you that you're not worth the effort and the investment. In either case, what you did not receive was validation. Now you must get for yourself the validation you need to build your confidence. You do this the same way you build muscles in the gym. You're actually going to put strain on a muscle, but in a controlled fashion. And by pumping that iron, you can make that muscle stronger with time and with exposure to the strain of pulling up that heavy weight. Likewise, you must give yourself a little bit of adversity, a little bit of change, but this time you do it in a controlled way. You create the change. So you may decide, you know what, today I'm going to take a different route when I walk home. Or today I'm going to wear a shirt that I've never worn before. Or today I am going to fill in the blank. Something different every day, something small that you can control. A different route to work, a different mode of transportation, a different greeting when you walk in, a different place to eat. Make a change. If you usually get the salad, switch it to the fish. If you usually get the fish, switch it to the chicken. Make changes in your life on purpose, small ones. And it may seem like this is silly, but it is not at all, because you were supposed to have grown up in an environment where you were able to do these experiments. And in the end, you were supposed to receive validation. Now you must give yourself that validation. So after you've made the change, you must observe in your conscious mind and journal what is actually happening. What do I notice when I make a change? Do I notice that it always turns out bad? No. And when you recognize that making changes often can lead to good results, then you can start to embrace change as a part of life. Because in fact, change does not just equal safe, or same does not just equal safe. Same equals no growth. Staying the same equals having no legacy. Staying the same equals having no new possibilities. Staying the same equals having no hope. Staying the same equals having nothing to show. You're trading a lot for so-called safety, when in reality, staying the same will get you hurt too. So instead of resisting the way the entire universe works, which by the way, the universe is ever expanding, i.e. changing, you need to expand with the universe. You need to be growing. The natural course of being a human being is that you continue to grow and expand and develop, which means you will need to move forward. You will need to reach out and reach up and see the possibilities, taste them, and hold them in your hand. In order to do that, you must purposely expose yourself to change. So make it your aim. If you notice you're a person who fears change, who gets anxiety around change, make it your aim, starting tomorrow, to start purposely making small changes. But here's the key. You have to validate yourself, because that's what you didn't receive. You always had to make changes. You've always made growth, but you never received the validation. So now when you make those changes, you must journal down the validation. It worked. I made this change from the chicken to the salmon. And when I did that, I really liked it. It was fine. I felt great. I'm glad I did it. Change doesn't always equal bad. Sometimes change really works out for the best. In that same journal, you'll want to go back into your past and do this meditation. Ask yourself, what are some examples of times that I have successfully made transitions and it was for the better? That question was, what are some examples of times that I've actually made transitions and it was for the better? Another question is, what are some examples of times that I've overcome adversity? Having those examples down in writing in your journal gives you the validation that you should have received. And you will find when you look back into your past, there were many times that you were able to successfully make a change. And it was for the best. It turned out well. In order for us to have adaptive behavior, we have to have the ability to adapt. That is, to change to varying circumstances. Change is inevitable. It's a part of life. We must learn to be able to face it as an opportunity, to be able to embrace change. And we do that by building the muscle. Another thing you can do in terms of your own personal meditation and journaling is use the MIND method. MIND stands for mentally identify negative distortions. Look at the way you're looking at the supposed change in your life. So let's say one of the things that you've gotten is an invitation to join a certain group or a job offer, and that's what's on the table, and that's what's making you feel anxiety. Look into your mind and analyze What are some of the things that are making me feel this fear? And as you go deep into that, okay, but why is that so important to me? But why is that such a thing? You will find distortions. Distortions are ways of thinking that are not adaptive, meaning they don't help you to get to your ultimate goals in life, meaning they don't work anymore. And those old thoughts can be things like catastrophizing, which is, I know if I leave this job and go to that next job, everything's going to go wrong. Or I fear disappointing others, or I fear failure. Find those negative distortions, the way that you're looking at things from a lens or a standpoint of being bad, of being actually negative. It could be that you're looking into the minds of other people. That's an example of a negative distortion or maladaptive thinking. For instance, you're saying, if I do this or that, if I make this move or that move, that person is going to judge me. You don't know that. You don't know that someone's going to judge you. Or I feel like everyone's looking at me. Okay, that's a distortion. That's not based in reality. Everyone is not looking at you. In reality, most people probably do not care about you as much as they care about themselves. Or you may identify distortions in that you're just tending to look at all the glass as half empty in situations. For instance, you may say, every time I've made a change, something went wrong. Okay, even if that were true, it's probably also true that every time you've made a change, something went right. That's the importance of not looking at things from a negative, purely negative lens. There's another way to look at things. A lot of the times that you've made changes, things have gone right also. So it would be distorted to say, every time I do something or I make a change, something goes wrong. Now, it's true that we may have fears, and that's totally natural. But we have to identify if our thinking is actually balanced. And to that end, we need to be dream driven, not fear driven. Although I know your parents use fear as a motivator for you, perhaps, you need to learn now not to allow the main motivation in your life to be fear. The main motivation in your life needs to be dreams and love. In fact, just like how the body is made up of 85% nitrogen and oxygen, it has about 15% carbon in it. Carbon in the body, if it goes beyond 15%, can become toxic to the bloodstream. The blood will become acidic, the liver will shut down, you won't be able to breathe, you won't be getting enough oxygen, you'll go into a coma and you could possibly die, all from having too much carbon in the body. That's just like fear. You can handle about 15% fear as a motivator in life. Occasionally, you got to have a little fear, a little anxiety about picking the kids up on time or paying your bills. But that's it. The other 85% of your energy needs to be dreams and love. What motivates you every day should be dreams. So it's not that what you're doing is wrong. It's that your motivation may be maladaptive, because if you're doing it because you're afraid of what's going to happen, you're just running from something. You're not running toward anything. You need to allow dreams to be your actual motivation, your driving force in life, and love to be your motivation and driving force. So, should I take this job promotion? Well, let me think in terms, instead of fear, let me think in terms of my dreams. What do I hope to accomplish in life? Where do I hope to be in a certain amount of time? Let me think in terms of my dreams. Be motivated by dreams. Know what your goals are. Identify a purpose, something you're working toward, and allow that to be what drives you. Don't be driven by fear. When you're driven by fear, you're just constantly running from the left to the right, and then you're that turtle again. You're inside your shell, and you ball yourself up. There will come a time where staying in that ball is more painful than just blossoming into the flower that you can become. So don't keep yourself buried. Reach out, build your muscle, your ability to embrace change. Identify the negative distortions. Analyze your thinking. Look for ways that you're looking at things from too much of a negative lens. And learn to see change as a potential to achieve your dreams, a potential to gain rewards. Learn to embrace change as the way in which you will lay down your legacy. Learn to embrace change as your potential to change the world so that you have something to show for your time here.